Good, thank you. We'll call the meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Land acknowledgement.
We respectfully acknowledge that the County of Haliburton is located on the Treaty 20 Mississauga territory and in the traditional territory of the Mississauga and Chippewa Nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaty First Nations. We acknowledge the shared presence of Indigenous nations throughout the area and recognize its original inhabitants as the stewards of its lands and waters since time immemorial.
That's great. This morning, we're going to have a swearing-in ceremony for Pat Casey. I would like Pat and Gary to come over to the podium if they would.
Wait. Councillor Casey, if you can read following a declaration, please.
Certainly. I, Pat Casey, have been elected to the office of councillor in the council in the corporation of the County of Haliburton. Do solemnly promise and declare that, number one, I will truly, faithfully, and impartially exercise this office to the best of my knowledge and ability. Number two, I have not received and will not receive any payment or reward or promise thereof for the exercise of this office in a biased, corrupt, or any other improper manner. Number three, I will disclose any pecuniary interest, direct or indirect, in accordance with the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Number four, I will be faithful and bear the true allegiance to His Majesty the King Charles III. And I make this solemn promise and declaration consciously believing it to be true and knowing that it is of the same force and effect as if made under oath.
Your Honor, if I could just make one quick adjustment to the thing, and Councillor Casey, if you can attest to this, that he's been appointed to the office, not elected to the office.
Yes, I've been appointed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
Welcome, Councillor Casey.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate it.
Adoption of the agenda.
The agenda for the June 17th, 2023 special meeting, Haliburton County Council be adopted.
We have someone move. Councillor Carter, second by Councillor McKechnie. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Any notice of pecuniary interests? Seeing none. Item of business, affordability governance study project, EORN. Engagement with County Council. Welcome, Jim, Lisa, and Maureen.
Thank you, Your Honor. It's great to be back in front of County Council again. Maureen and I are going to lead you through a little bit of a presentation, and we have some brand new information that those that we've met with at Council in Haliburton East or Highlands East, I'm sorry, and here in Dysart yesterday, how it seemed. But we thought it's hot off the press because our team back at home has been doing some work, and we got this new information we're going to show you on some slides last night. But we thought it was important to show to County Council today. So our apologies to those that we've already spoken to. You wouldn't have seen it this time that we're going to walk you through it. So Maureen and I will do this together, and of course Lisa is there making sure that we're doing all of the right things and keeping it up as we go. And some of this you will have seen if we've been to your council before, in part. But since we're here at County Council, we're going to try and do what we've done with the other people that we've been speaking with, including your local councils. Met with some community leaders last night, and certainly most of your staff already, including the senior leadership team and staff. We've met with about, I think, half so far, about just over 90 staff. Earlier in the week, it was early in the week. What's today, Wednesday? We've been busy. And then we have another further staff meeting today with another host of all of your collective staff, and it's been great so far. So, not to use your time badly, let's just launch, if we can, right into the studies. We'll go to the next slide. As some of you have heard, what we really want to do today is to try and have a discussion with County Council along a whole number of items, but we're letting people know that we want to make sure that we understand the financial and fiscal positions of all 5 municipalities in Haliburton County. We're looking at your financial information returns and budgets and other things to make sure we get a good understanding that our team is doing that behind us, if I can put it that way. We're looking at what some of the pressures are going forward and thinking about approaches, and we're really interested, of course, what your opinions are, and we'll have a chance to talk about that in just a few minutes, and really looking at the long term. As we know that we have to plan for the future. Local government's not going anywhere. It's going to be around for a long time, but we know there's lots of stuff coming at you in the coming years. So we want to be as prepared as we can. We want you to participate and feel free to say what's on your mind. It's important for us to understand that as part of this whole consultation process. We're having group discussions, but if you have something to say individually, please let us know. We really value that. We've done different tools and techniques to get information, and we'll show you some of that and some of the results that we've been getting so far and feedback. And we've got some interesting post-survey results, both from the public participation point of view and from staff and council participation. So we'll show you those in just a few minutes. So it's going to be, I think, hopefully interesting for you today. Next slide. We've been asked many times when we've been out talking with people is why are we doing this study now? And from what we gather and understand, that this has been a particularly tough year budget-wise in 2026, and it really brought home the fact that there are significant financial pressures on all governments in Haliburton County, local and at the county level. And that the forecasts for costs continue to rise. So it's a truism that there's pressure. And I think as a result of that, County Council said, let's take a look at the situation and let's think about what we might be able to do that together going forward as a group of municipalities. How would that look? And we think that the study aligns with provincial expectations. We know that the province has been looking at other ways of organizing functions like conservation authorities and other things. So I think there's a definite interest from the province that municipalities should be looking at their operations, see what we could do differently and do better. So I think the study is perfect timing for that. As I said, we're going to look at each of your financial positions so that we understand it and try to understand what's in front of you in terms of pressures. So that's critical information. One of the key things that we have to do in the study is look at alternate, perhaps, governance models and best practices from other jurisdictions. We haven't landed on what we might consider the models yet. That's why we're here today, is to talk about it. But we are thinking, of course, what that might look like. And as we understand it, at the end of the day, when the study is complete and County Council has received it, it will be available for the next councils coming in to make decisions on what to do, if anything, for the way we organize ourselves here in the county. So it'll be up to the next councils coming in to make those kinds of decisions. But it will also give those people who, I guess, who are thinking about running for councils or are already committed some really good information about the current situation. And hopefully we'll spark some discussion about what could be, what should be, and where might we go together. So the timing on it, I think, and congratulations to County Council for doing this and getting this study started and having it ready. And we'll show a slide at the end about when that be ready, we'll be ready. We are busy doing a lot of things. One of the things that's come up in all of our discussions is concern about the county's unique context. And it's the local uniqueness of it. And you're going to see some information on that shortly. So we're very mindful of people's concerns about it as we're doing these consultations. We're really probing to see, what does that mean? What does being unique mean? Just so we can be aware of what are the things to highlight. As I said, we're looking at the budgets and financial statements. We're also looking at the former service delivery review. There was lots of good information in that as part of our work. We're getting lots of feedback from the community, and you'll see that in the results of week 1 of the open public survey, which I'm going to show you, or we're going to show you shortly, which is interesting. And of course, we've been looking at, as we said earlier, what are other places doing in terms of other models, so that we can see what's a best practice and hopefully find some good avenues for you to consider going forward. Next slide. Just, I think you'll probably know this, but be very brief. We have a small team, but I think it's a good team in terms of the study project. Lisa is the project lead. She's making sure we're doing everything that we're supposed to do. Jason St. Pierre is the CAO for ERN. I know you know that. And we brought on Linda Assad. She's got 40+ years with Bell Canada, actually, as in project management, which is a really important set of skills for a study like this. So Linda is really behind the scenes, making sure that we do all that we're supposed to be doing. On the finance side, Jennifer Stover from Peterborough County is helping us with the financial analysis. And you can see on the engagement side, the Red Brick Communications, Maureen and ourselves, in terms of doing the consultations. And I should let Maureen introduce herself. I should have done that right at the beginning, because maybe some of you don't know Maureen like we know Maureen. So I'm going to do that now. Maureen.
Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to be here this morning. So I am recently a retired CAO from the United Counties of SDNG, sort of on the east end of the UWC. Prior to that, I was the CAO for the city of Cornwall for several years, and also a general manager of finance. So my municipal career is about 20 years. And prior to that, finance and a private sector career with Royal Bank and Nissan Canada. So this is certainly a great opportunity to participate in this project. Happy to work alongside the team, and happy to be here this morning.
Thanks, Maureen. Sorry for not doing that right at the start. Just got going. Next slide. This just gives you an idea of what we're doing this month. June is really busy on the engagement side, and you can see from the long list of meetings that we have, we're having 4 public open houses, 1 in each of the member municipalities of the county. And we've been meeting with staff, former elected officials, community leaders, and the list goes on. So we are really heavily into this work. This has been a busy week this week, and it'll be busy again next week. But we want to make sure that those who are interested in participating have a chance to participate directly. So June is about listening and talking to people, and July will be both analysis and creating the final report. So, next slide. So as we've said, the goals of our engagement process is to really build trust in the way we're doing the study, reach as many people as we can, give great information and accurate information, and offer as many engagement opportunities as we can, and that demonstrate that we are really listening. I think we will fail in engagement if people feel that they haven't had a chance to participate. So we really want to do everything that we can to do that. And on the right side of the slide, you can see the kinds of tools that we're using to try and give people that opportunity to participate. And you'll start to hear some targeted media advertising, I think this week, Lisa, so that, again, the members of the public will have as much information about the study as we can give them as well. Next slide. So I'm going to turn it over to Maureen, who's going to walk you through the high level county and member municipality fiscal context.
So this is information that I think was consistent and shared with 2 of the councils earlier this week. So your tax base is 98% residential, which is incredibly high. I would say across Ontario, the average residential tax class is probably closer to 35 to 45%. So you're double or almost triple what the average would be. We did mention to everyone, MPAC has left your assessments at 2016 market values. And so that just, I think, adds additional complexity to as your community is growing, as certain areas change in market value, those values are not up to date. Average household income in your area is 17% below the provincial average. So it speaks to maybe an affordability factor. And you also rely heavily on a tourism-based economy with a lot of seasonal service or seasonal residential properties as well that also put demands on services at certain times of the year. There's high cost services that are mandated beyond your local control. So those are legislated by the province, emergency services, for example. Federal and provincial infrastructure funding is absolutely unpredictable and not sufficient for municipalities. So we've talked quite a bit about infrastructure through many of our engagement sessions, but municipalities have a lot of infrastructure that's now approaching probably the 50-year mark. And at some point in time, that infrastructure is going to need to be replaced. Move to the next slide, please. So for 2026, your budget process, more than 35% of your levy increase for this current year has gone to outside requirements to fund. And so it's really made it difficult to, I think, pursue some of your local priorities or the additional components in your townships, or you'd like to, add certainly certain services or values. If we look at that chart, you can see that 52% is going to the city of Kawartha Lakes for shared services. There's public health, MPAC, policing. All of these items are going to probably continue as well and continue to put pressure on Haliburton County and the township's local budgets.
May I ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
Thanks very much. Yeah. Just to really be able to understand the graph. So the 11%, the 16%, do they total to the 35% increase?
Correct.
That's right. So I guess I'm wondering, is it county and lower tier as well?
So this is combined,
This is
county and
combined.
lower tier, and these payments would be made likely. Well, everybody probably pays MPAC individually, but then some of these items would be paid through like the upper tier to the outside organizations for shared services.
So just for a point of clarity, Councillor, through Warden Burton. So these are the numbers reflective of the county budget increase. So these are our numbers. They're not the local municipal numbers. They're just the ones that went through the county budget process.
Okay, so that's why there was no OPP. Okay, all right. So just finally then, I just wonder, I see the library is listed at 15.9% of the increase, but we actually decreased our contribution to the library this year. So I wonder, just trying to make sense of that figure.
Gary?
Again, if I might word, so these are the numbers that came directly to the budget package. There was that number is, so this would be an older chart. That number is, like, put in reference piece, that would be that it's a very small number too, part of it, the 15%, but that would have been from the presented budget, not the past budget.
Cease?
I was going to basically just follow up a little bit on what Councillor Dow was asking. The OPP, the provincial contribution for education and so on and so forth, and other issues like that are in the billowhack of the lower tier. When we look at how much the lower tiers pay, are we going to be looking at that coming down the road so that we can see it at the lower tier level of exactly how much third-party stuff we're generating? Because as far as the lower tier is concerned, the county is a third party. If you look at the comparison that I'm making, we have very little at the lower tier control over it, other than we have representation on this council. But we get a bill from the county we get a bill from the province, we get a bill from whoever, and we just pay it. And that's kind of sort of the way it works. So are we going to get a similar kind of graph breakdown for the respective lower tier municipalities?
That's a really good question. I think we could get that information. So I think we're going to take note of that and we'll see what we can put together.
Other questions? Councillor Carter.
So I bring this up because I think that if we're going to do this, you know, we need to have the truth
Right.
and it all to be very, very clear. This CKL situation here, you know, we do pay CKL for some services, but a lot of what we are paying is sort of pro rata. In other words, we pay, if there's 800 housing units and there's 200 here, well, we pay 1/4 of that. So, you know, the number, even though we're paying it to CKL, is really kind of our number. If we didn't have affordable housing, then, you know, the number would be much smaller. There are issues that we have with CKL, and we've been trying to negotiate this. But on other things, you know, the provincial government changes a rule. And, you know, we're in a situation where we handle child services, social services together with CKL. They're the larger party, so they have the admin part of it. And then they charge us, but it's not, I don't want to make it seem like CKL is just, you know, going off on their own and deciding on a whole bunch of things. Some of it's generated by the province and some of it is generated by our portion of the costs. A little bit slightly different than the health unit, because although we do have representation in the health unit on things like on the CKL, or CKL with the Housing Corporation, you know, there's 5 board members and we have 2. So it's not like we're silent partners that just get charged. We are part of it. So it's just, we just need to make sure that, you know, all these numbers are clear.
And I think from our perspective on the slide, I think what we're trying to demonstrate is that, you know, many of those services that are provided by Kawartha Lakes, for example, they're legislated, and housing is incredibly legislated, right? So depending on what federal and provincial funding programs are available, it does come back to, you know, the respective municipalities and the shared services agreement and what is paid proportionately, right? But the slide is more so to demonstrate, you know, just the sheer amount of your tax levy that you have not a lot of control over, but you have to maintain.
Councillor McKechnie?
This might, you know, strictly deal in our own backyard, but the money we pay City of Kawartha Lakes housing and this affordable housing that comes here. I mean, I have a lot of people who have concerns about, we have no say or any percentage of how many of those spots are for our Haliburton citizens. And to me, this is a very big concern because we're in Haliburton County, and we're sending all this money and we have to worry about Haliburton County, not Peterborough. And a lot of people are coming from Peterborough and Lindsay or wherever the surrounding areas, and God bless them, but we have our own concerns in Haliburton County, and I just don't understand. I know that's maybe not, this isn't the right time and place to discuss this, but to me, it's a big issue.
And through you, Mr. Chair, we did hear, we have had some feedback on that in some of our discussions yesterday as well.
Councillor Dayu.
Thanks. And I just want to piggyback on Councillor Carter's comments for a moment. I really appreciate what the slide is trying to offer us. I do see, though, when I look at the criteria, you've got the library, you've got professional health recruitment, Lakeland's public health, affordable housing, the library. I would argue that these are actually local priorities. Those are really important things for us. They're not things that detract us from getting good work done. It's just that the modality through which the work gets done is not directly responsible, here. But I think all of those things are really important to Haliburton.
Councillor Casey.
Yes, your presentation yesterday, I had a thought afterwards. It may or may not be irrelevant, but we seem to be getting downloaded a lot of provincial assets and such as roads and OBP and everything else. And if I'm wrong, please accept my apologies, but I'm wondering if there's another line item we could put in this questionnaire, or the relevance to the figures that are coming up of what we used to get reimbursed for maintaining these roads, or what the cost is now, because again, it's an unfair advantage for our local county to look after what used to be provincial highways that required a certain amount of maintenance, bridges, pavement, and everything else, as an example, and then force that on us to take up the maintenance costs, which are very large coming up on that note. So again, for my own information anyway, it would be great to know what that used to be, if we used to get reimbursed for it, versus what's coming up. I suppose we would have an idea what's coming up for maintenance issues, because again, I don't know whether we have enough traction in Haliburton County to be a loud voice for equal representation of getting some of that money back, whether it's, an increase in property transfer taxes by 1% that covers off a lot of this bigger debt that's coming up in regards to maintaining the infrastructure that's being, to me, unfairly handed down to us. But anyway.
Jim, I think you probably have a good example here for us.
Yeah, Highway 62.
That's the one, yeah.
Yeah, so the provincial highway download happened in 95 and 97. What's that, almost 30 years ago? That there was a transfer across the province for a number of what were provincial highways. And in Hastings County was Highway 62, Highway 33, Highway 14, a few others. We would have had the same here. And there was some money at the time. That money's long gone in terms of need. So now it's, the responsibility Hastings County now, because all county roads were in 1997 and 98 were transferred to the local municipalities. So the county roads department closed. And lots of people wonder whether that was the right decision over time. But so the burden of maintaining those former provincial highways are now at the local level. And those provincial highways are built at a different standard, or were built at a different standard because of the volume of traffic, i.e. require a much higher standard of maintenance. So it's been a real challenge, as Warden Davis indicated. Municipality of Hastings Highlands has the bulk of the former 62, and that's been a huge challenge for them. And they've worked for 30 years to try and make that change happen, and get more funding for it. And it's been a real challenge, I think, to convince the province. I don't know whether you can ever convince the province that they should bring back more money. And I'll just give you one last reflection, and I think I mentioned this at one point. I've been involved in municipal affairs for 40 plus years in my career, and I remember the days when we provided from the province to the municipal sector, to municipalities, about $1 billion a year in unconditional grants to support your operations. And there was a further 750 million a year that went from MTO to local municipalities and counties to buy graders, to get ready for bridge repairs. All of that has disappeared in 40 plus years that I've been around. And what's been replaced with it is, now it's called OMF, I think, isn't it? Or was, yeah, of about $500 million, I think, declining. Yeah. So the sector, the municipal sector, has had to deal with this decline in transfers. And that's and I think that's why you're talking today about some of the pressures, because that's your reality. is that, roads, bridges, water, wastewater, sometimes there's grants for capital and you have to line up and apply for them. But it's a hit and miss opportunity for you with the grant. So it's made your life a real challenge. And I think that's part of why we're talking to you today. And
Councillor
looking at
Casey.
the study.
Oh, sorry, Jim.
Sorry, one last point. And again, I'm preaching to the choir here, but rural roads, secondary roads, that's what I feel our responsibility is in this county. Interprovincial roads or King's highways, which they were, to me, is the responsibility of the province on that note, because you get more transient traffic going through it, higher volumes, more cost. But anyways, just to furthermore, it's an argument to the province, whether it goes anywhere or not. Anyway.
So I can say, if I may, your honors, municipal councilors and staff have been making that same point for the past 30 years. Well, highways. And that's not something you shouldn't stop talking about. It's still a truism. It's a huge pressure.
Sounds like nobody's listening. Councillor McKechnie.
Yeah, I'll be really quick. Like, this is a prime example of the bigger government. You're talking B words, billions of dollars. Well, how eventually it catches up to you in our little communities here in the county of Haliburton and the four municipalities. And I mean, I don't understand how they can even think that we can continue it at this rate, because we have a lot of roads and bridges. Like, we're just talking about that one item today, or right now I am. What else in other areas have they downloaded or put on us? I mean, that would be an interesting number to know. So it's just all about money, and I don't know where they think we're going to find this money. I'll be quiet.
Thanks, Walt. It seems to me, Jim, that we are asked to be doing more and more, and we're getting less and less. That's something that maybe we should give some consideration to as well.
And I think what you're trying to do with this study is to say, with what we have influence on and what we can control, and we do things differently to do it better. And that's why I congratulate County Council for taking this on. A timely effort to look at what it is. What's the situation here locally and with the county? Is everything just fine? Or should we be looking at trying to do something different? Is that something that we're working on?
Questions? Councillor Royal.
Yeah, I think the points that are being made here on the downloading are very, very valid. And I think regardless of where this takes us in the future, what needs to come out of this is a report that makes the province aware of what has happened to us so far. And if they stay on the same path, what could happen to us going down the road. For instance, if I'm not mistaken, once upon a time, and I'm only going to mention a couple of them, Glenmorgan Road was a provincial jurisdiction, 503 was, 507 was, and I'm sure there's bunches of others that were in that same general category. And I think picking up on what Councillor Casey said, we got that bill now. And so if we're going to go through this and we're going to use it for multiple purposes as a report, I think part of that purpose should be to get back to the province and say, hey guys, you're hanging us out here. You're asking us to be more efficient, but at the same time, you're putting more burden on the same infrastructure in terms of, infrastructure is the wrong word, in terms of the same organization. Now, whether it's at 1 level or 5 level or 2 levels, it's irrelevant. The point is, we can't afford it, but it has to be done.
Councillor Carter.
And it's a different subject to, trying to get money from the provincial government. But, at the end of the day, their view of it is we haven't gone into every home and reached into the seat cushions to see if there's change that we can collect. The issue is that we need more money to do everything that needs to be done. And the provincial government is saying, we don't want to raise taxes, you raise taxes. Okay, and so the money comes from one person, the taxpayer. And but the provincial government would rather see it that we're the ones who are going to take the heat for it rather than them. So this is going to be a great discussion, and I'm sure it'll go on for the next 40 years. But I guess we have to do what we can do here.
Okay, other questions? I suppose one comment I'd have is, where's impact in all this?
Well, as you know, impact is, assesses the property values. The decision for a reassessment, I know Maureen is probably gonna maybe mention this, but the decision around a reassessment is the provincial government's decision. It's not impacts. So I think probably impact has been ready since 2016 to do reassessments, but that they haven't been given the go signal for it. And I don't know what the answer, the reason why is, but you're now 10 years out of date in terms of reassessments. And I was saying yesterday, because the issue in talking with some community leaders that came up was helping the public understand assessment versus taxation. And if you go on YouTube, Impact has a very short little 2.5 minute clip about just that very point. And it's really well done. And we used to use it, and we still use it in a lot of counselor and new counselor training, just to try and explain that relationship between assessment and taxation. It clarifies it very, very well. So I would just encourage you to take a look at it. I think if you just go on YouTube, is where it's posted, or Google it or something like that. You can see this little clip, and it's very educational. It's very helpful. And I think for the average taxpayer or ratepayer, it explains how your property taxes actually are calculated with assessment. And it's for 2.5 minutes. It's worth the watch. Just a little tip.
Councillor Rowe.
I think the other thing that people will need to understand is that the overall number that we put through and have to be reimbursed for through the impact assessment program is based exclusively on our budgets. So the total egg doesn't change. What changes is how the egg is distributed across all of our groups. And not that I am indicating a conflict of interest here, because I'm just one of many, many people in Haliburton County. The current assessment for my home is $244,000. Real estate agent tells me I can put it on the market for $650,000. So when Impact decides it's going to rearrange all this stuff, my taxes are going to change dramatically. The next question we have to ask, over what period of time? If they're going to dump all that on us in 1 year, there's a lot of people here going to lose their homes. They're just going to plain lose their homes. So there has to be a graduated system whereby, if that is going to take place and the egg gets redistributed across the valuation assessment, if you wish, then it has to be done in some logical way. At this point in time, nobody seems to know how that's going to work. We haven't been consulted on any of it. And so our taxpayers are looking to us to say, how's it going to work? And we have absolutely no answer.
So perhaps I could just respond to a couple of those items. I've been a treasurer in the municipal sector, and I've got contacts across many municipalities and finance. So to your point, what ends up happening is municipalities determine what they need for a budget, what that levy is. And then typically what you try to do is understand what is going to be the impact on the average property owner. So to your point, if your assessment is changing, say it doubles or it triples, well, the tax rate's not going to remain the same. What happens is you still need to focus on what you need for your levy to deliver your services. And then that gets redistributed based on the new assessment and tax roll that you receive from MPAC. There'll be some properties like the discrepancy or the change is going to be how your property has changed in value in comparison to other properties in the pool. So in a scenario like that, you would anticipate that the tax rate is going to drop. Typically, what MPAC has done in previous years is they phase it in over a 4-year period, right? But I think that, to your point, you have very good questions, and I think that so much time has passed. Everybody is concerned with what that might be when it is eventually decided that they're going to change those values.
Other questions at this point?
Sure.
Deputy Warden.
I'm not sure if I mean, it's obvious to us all where our problems have come from in many ways. It's been the province, the downloading of the province, the requirements that they've laid in our laps. And I really have absolutely no faith whatsoever in any success in lobbying the province to change things. I don't think they're going to change, and therein lies the reason for this study. We have to find, a way to offer services in a more streamlined and cost-effective way. The action is on us because I don't see there being any change or any success with the province at all.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Moving on.
Moving on to the next slide, please. So this slide is just showing combined expenses, and and just to highlight the bigger categories. You take a look at the bottom, transportation services eats up the biggest share of the pie when it comes to your budgets, as well as protection services, health services, environmental, general government, and recreation and cultural services. So the tax levy raised is 58 million. There's approximately 17 million, I believe, that is received via upper levels of government funding and grants, so provincial and federal. And then there'd be some revenue that you generate based on fees and permits. Maybe the next slide. So your combined assets total just over $1 billion. You have, so for the current year, there's an annual funding gap of approximately 8 million. Total debt across the 4 townships in the upper tier is 31 million. Total reserves is 39 million. And we're not here today to indicate what is good and what is not good or what the numbers should be. But if you look at your total reserves of 39 million versus your asset size of just over $1 billion, it's about 3%, right? So when you're thinking about aging infrastructure and future capital needs, that's just a number to maybe put in perspective. But through this exercise, we're going to have some more financial analysis that will come out. But at a high level, we wanted to just share some of this information. Our next slide.
So this is some of the new information that I referenced at the beginning. It's maybe a little hard to see. But this slide is speaking to the survey results from elected officials across the member municipalities and county council. These are the respondents that that replied to the survey as we got ready for the consultation process. And we just raised them. It's just for information. But I think there's some interesting observations. Around the need for the study, you can see that there's really, I think, strong agreement. Sort of reflects what people have been saying today about the timeliness and the need for it. A few disagree. There are areas that could be streamlined, just what we've just been talking about. There's, I think, again, pretty strong agreement that that's an area to be thinking about. I think this next one is important too. This is coming from you as elected officials around the issue of collaboration. And frankly, we've heard a lot about collaboration amongst staff as well, from staff. So there's a fair bit there's a bit of disagreement, I would say, around whether or not you're working well together as municipalities across the county. That's what this slide seems to be saying. On the next piece around the openness for change, there's very strong agreement amongst you, for those that responded, that you're open to looking at change. That, from my perspective, is really important, because I think, you're coming into this with an open mind. So that's what we take from that. And there seems to be, again, a split between agreeing and disagreeing around whether there's clarity around roles and responsibilities. I would have hoped that it would have been 100%. We know exactly what's what, but there is some uncertainty, I think, around that. Did you want to say something?
I'm
Good.
just wondering, this slide is not part of your presentation that I can see. I'm just wondering if we'll have that made available to us.
Yes, absolutely. We inserted these slides this morning because we got them last night. So they didn't make it into your initial package, but yes, we'll get those for you. And there's some more, I think, that you'll be interested in, but around the key messages, modernization is being supported. You understand there's financial pressures, that staying the same carries big risk, status quo. That's what we see from that. And the implications around the path forward is around modernization, shared services, and change. So it's just, this is a point in time observation that we got from your response to the questions that were posted in there or provided in the survey. Next slide. We are giving you a lot of detail on this particular slide. These are responses, there are 105 responses from staff to the surveys. That's a very good response. We're getting the opportunity to, as we told you before this morning, about talking to your staff directly in session. So we're garnering more information as we go, but we wanted to share this with you because it's important, I think, for you to see what your staff are saying about some of the issues around the affordability concern. They're very concerned or somewhat concerned. It's a strong item that's on their minds about affordability. On the quality of life, they see where they are as, a great place to live and very good in some circumstances. But there are a few saying that, maybe there's improvement needed around the quality of life. The top priorities, they say, are improving the affordability for taxpayers. That's pretty important to hear from your staff, I think. I think that's good news that they're interested that. They're very interested around service delivery and sufficient staffing. And those two sort of go together in some ways. But they're clearly, what's on their mind is doing a good job and doing it effectively. They're concerned about infrastructure investment. I think those are some of the folks who are seeing infrastructure firsthand and dealing with it every day. So they have a real concern around the amount of investment that's going in and the amount that's needed. Economic growth they see as important. And we heard a lot about this, was that, at the staff level, the staff are concerned about their children being able to stay here, to find jobs, and to stay in the community. And so I think they reflect in many ways what probably a lot of citizens feel about the area, that they need opportunities. They're very interested in doing things differently with using modern tools and technologies, which is great. Likewise, the speed of decision-making is on their mind as well, and identity is important too. Just gives you an idea of what your staff, at least the ones that responded, the 105, feel are important to them. And I think it's good to know that sort of stuff.
Councillor Dayu?
Yeah, actually, I would say it's magnificent to see this slide because we've not had the opportunity for these kinds of conversations in any formal way with our colleagues. There are people who matter to us very much, and we care very much about what they do, and this is hugely revealing and very important for us to see. So thank you so much for giving this group the opportunity to see this slide.
Deputy Warden?
I agree. This is, really, really interesting information and very, very good to see the responses. I'm wondering if you have similar numbers for municipal staff survey and how they might differ. I see this is county staff.
No, this is all this. Yeah, we couldn't change the heading on it. This is all staff, including the county staff.
Okay, that's good
Yeah.
to know.
We're going to change it just to the staff survey, which includes everybody. Yeah. Lisa? Yeah. So. Yeah, thanks, Lisa. I was supposed to mention that at the start of this slide.
Councillor
it's
Rao.
important.
The other thing we got to look at, and this is awesome. Thank you very, very much, because it explains a few things. we are getting to be, or trying to be, fiscally frugal and to be efficient. The question now becomes, are we effective? Because a lot of our public is saying that we're not. It's taking too long to get responses. There is no direct communication with anybody. I'm not sure where AI fits into all of that. But at the end of the day, we also have to look at it from the point of view of, yes, we're trying to cut costs. Yes, we're trying to make things more efficient. But at the end of the day, in the process of eliminating some of that communication, are we creating more stress for our staff? Because there is a point where our staff does not want to put up with some of the negative conversations that take place with some of our public. And it's not their fault. It's not the public's fault. It's the situation that we're currently in. So I'm wondering if when we start looking at some of the things that we're doing, that we not only look at the financial impact, but we look at the overall effectiveness of what we're doing with the public that we serve.
I think if you look at the last box, the two-tier government effectiveness, that might also tell you something. If you look at it in terms, they rate in terms of effectiveness of the current way we organize ourselves, and I'm using the royal we. 26 of the respondents said it, it was effective or very effective. The bottom part, though, neutral, ineffective, and very ineffective, is, I think, gives you pause to think about that. So I think it goes to your point, Cecil, that we need to think about how we're delivering services, and is it the most effective way to do it? There's quite a few folks who say they're either neutral or it's not really working very well.
Deputy Warden?
Just in addition to my comments about how pleased I am to see some of these responses, one of the things that I've always been concerned about, starting with service delivery and now with this study, is that the feeling that we're putting our staff sometimes into a very awkward position, because it impacts the work that they do. It impacts whether or not they retain their jobs. And it's just, and change is huge for people who've been in place for a long time. So, this makes, these responses even more just beneficial in many, many ways.
Councilor McKechnie? Oh, sorry, Jim.
Well, I was just going to say what we've heard from staff in this session that we had and through the survey is that this is an opportunity that they're actually getting a chance to weigh in through this process. And I think that's been, thank you for allowing them to do that, for giving them the freedom to tell you what's on their minds. And that's what you're seeing. And I think that's very powerful, but it's the way you've allowed us to do the study.
Councilor McKechnie?
You probably don't have this information, Jim, but I myself personally, I'd love to know it. When did most of this, the downloading start?
Well, I've been around, I was around a long time, and Maureen and Gary, we've all been involved in this. I can tell you when it started from my point of view, it's the first piece of downloading happened, if I can remember correctly, in the late 80s. And that was around court security. Sounds silly, but I was at the province when things started to change. And it doesn't matter what political stripe. All governments at the provincial level started to rearrange their priorities. Remember when I talked about the unconditional grants and the MTO grants? That started to change when responsibilities were starting to, and the first thing that I recall a big change was around court security. They started to make municipalities who had police forces and there were courthouses responsible for security of the court. It used to be provincial responsibility. And that didn't sound like a lot, but it ended up today. It's a really expensive responsibility for municipalities that have courts in their building. In Minden, right? Now, I think the OPP did probably provide the court security in some fashion, maybe in Minden, but I bet you're being billed for it. So that's really, in my memory, Councillor, when things got started, and it got on a bit of a roll because I think governments realized that they could do it. And then it really got going around the who does what situation back in the early 90s with the Harris government started looking at changing how we deliver things. And that's when social services became a responsibility. And I think I mentioned this yesterday. Ontario is the only province that requires municipalities to pay for affordable housing or social housing. Every place else, every other jurisdiction, it's a provincial or a territorial responsibility. And likewise in public health. It's a responsibility for local municipalities, counties to pay for a portion of public health. Now, if I could just give you a small anecdote, not to use up too much time, but I was involved in the modernization review of public health. And whenever I went and met with a group of elected officials, I asked the question, do you want to be in this business? You know, because we were paying 25% at the time, right? Or 30%, whatever the number was. And everybody said it's really important to be able to try and influence how public health is delivered and what's delivered locally, because it's about the health of your residents. And people understood that they were paying for it, but they also got a say in it in some fashion. So it's been a long journey around to where we at today, but we're responsible for housing. We got downloaded housing in 2000, I think it was, land ambulance, various different services in that slide that Maureen put up. Some of those services are as a result of the responsibly being offloaded or downloaded to municipal governments. So, and it's substantial. Now, in fairness, because we might hear the province say to us, they also took back some responsibilities for, on the upload of social service costs as well. Costs went back to the province. So they're in that, and that was in the mid 2000s. So it's up and down. That's a long answer, sorry.
Yeah. So that's not my time, Dave.
I'll decide.
So like to me, and I know this is another question, you're probably gonna have trouble giving me the answer to, but like since 1980 or even 90, how much money have they downloaded to, like, just say the county of Haliburton? Like, what's that?
That's kind of what I'm asking her to run.
Yeah, like what exactly, like, because to me, like when you mention the word billion of dollars, like to me, and we all know this, we all say this, there's one taxpayer. There's one person who pays for all of this, what we're talking about here. Like, this isn't a game. This is like, we work for the taxpayers. And this has been going on for so many years. And now it's been put on our plate. All the councillors and all the municipalities and counties. And like, this is such a big issue, and the province just says, well, like you said earlier, well, the province wants us to become more efficient. Well, we only have one person who pays for all this stuff. And they're the ones who downloaded over the last 20, 30 years, billions of dollars. Well, what do they expect? We're in trouble today because of all the downloading. I mean, how does this end? Like just having going from a 2-tier to a 1-tier, like that's not the answer that I think it is.
It might be not the full answer, but it could be part of the answer.
What, the taxpayers are going to pay for it? Is that what you're saying?
No. If you're looking at how you can do things maybe better, maybe there's a different way that you can do what you can control is what we're talking about in this study.
Billions of dollars?
No, we're talking about the services that you're delivering here, the ones that come, the housing and stuff, and I think Councillor Bob mentioned it. It's you do this through an agreement with CKL for some of those services. That's part of it. But AMO has been, and I know you're aware of this, AMO has been pushing hard for a new fiscal arrangement between the province and municipalities, and they've, I think, struggled to get traction on it. but it's absolutely needed from a municipal perspective, because you're right. The burden is very, very heavy on local property tax bases. And so AMO's been asking for a new fiscal arrangement with Ontario to address the issues that you've raised. And that kind of effort has to continue, because I think you're quite right in saying, you know, it's almost nearly impossible to carry on with the burden of costs that you have, whether it's in shared services or, you know, continued provincial downloading of their costs onto the property tax base. It's not the answer you want to hear, but the answer is you gotta keep at it. That's where the advocacy. But my own personal view is advocacy works best when you've got your own house in order, when you can demonstrate that you've done something.
Well, maybe the province should get their house in order.
Probably.
How about the feds?
Not being an elected official, I'll stay away from this.
Councillor Ryle.
The other thing too,
Joe.
getting back to the chart that we have up here, which is really, really, really good. One of the questions I have is when people leave anywhere, some of them get attracted because there's more money somewhere else. They're also the smaller percentage. People leave because they're just not satisfied or comfortable with where they're working. And it can come from a lot of different things. They're not appreciated, whatever. But it also comes from the stress of just doing the job. And when you replace somebody, the cost of that is huge. It's phenomenally huge. One, you lose the productivity of the person for the period of time they're gone. You lose the productivity of the person that's coming in until they get trained. You've got the cost of finding somebody and getting them on board. There's a delay of all that, and how long does it take to get all that done? So there's huge amounts of cost associated with that. And if they're leaving because of what we're seeing there, or some of them are, then that's a big issue. And that's not something that we need a province for. That's something that we need to be able to look at and say, how can we contribute towards that? Because, you know, again, I think everybody's of the opinion that the turnover rate for the county, whether it's upper tier or lower tier, is much higher than it should be. And what's that costing us? Like what's that doing it? Have you had, or would it be fair? Again, we got privacy to deal with here, to review some of the exit interviews that we've had to try to find out why people left. Did they leave because, I don't know, they had a personal issue? Or did they leave because the stress of what they could not do or were forced to do within the environment that they had? It would be nice to know that, in my mind, because that's something that I think we could control. We could, or at least have some influence over.
So perhaps through you, Mr. Chair, I'll speak to some of my own experience, but if you can work together to structure departments to build capacity. And so the example that I've been using this week and speaking with several is at SDNG, we have planning at the county level, and we deliver planning services for most of the townships that are part of SDG. And so because at one point in time, it's difficult for any township or municipality to find proper registered planners. So at SDG, we have a team of 8, and I'm not saying that that's a team that you would have here, but you have people that do intake, you have junior planners, you have some senior planners, you have like the director. And through that group, you've got expertise, you've got coaching, you've got mentoring, you've got training. And so you're part of a bigger team. You don't feel like you're in a township on your own. And so it doesn't necessarily mean amalgamation, but sometimes when you centralize some of these services and people are part of a bigger team, they see career development, they see support and training. And so it might be difficult to go back and properly assess why people have left. I think throughout the municipal sector, we need to be fair. There's been a tremendous amount of movement because there's been a real shortage of staff. And so people have been able to leave and jump and seek other opportunities, whether it's closer to home, whether it's more money. There's been a lot of that. Just coming out of COVID, there was a massive retirement exodus of municipal employees. So it's not, I wouldn't say it's all like, I don't think it's entirely on the townships, but I do think that if you build capacity in your teams and people see opportunities, there's a likelihood that you're going to, you know, have better retention of those employees. I can speak from the planning group that we have at SDG. People, when we have positions come up, we get good applications. People don't want to leave. And so, and I think it's part of the way that the team is set up. And so those are just some of the examples that we have experienced, but those are also components that, you know, maybe the cost savings will be that constant turnover that you spoke to. Right now, you've got a much more stable team and structure in place, as an example.
Councillor Casey.
Yeah, I won't beat this to death, but you just echoing what Walt's talking about there earlier on. It's a two-part play where we want to keep our house in order and maximize efficiencies, whether that's snow plows or what have you in-house. On the same note, but you know, as we continue down the road here, we're going to maximize our efficiencies locally. However, if the efficiencies of the province, and again, I'm beating a dead horse for the province thing again, but if that doesn't improve, then we're forced to bear the weight of their inefficiencies, such as we're going to go through this process, we're going to streamline a bunch of things, and we're going to make ourselves sharp in terms of what I just talked about. And then 2 years from now, we're going to get another thing dropped on us that we have to look after or download. So it's like bailing out a boat. It's got a hole in it, but every time you put a finger in a hole, another one happens on that note. So again, I know we're one small county, and again, I'm fresh at the table here as of today, but on the same note, I don't know the amount of pull or who we can phone. Number one, since 1980, why is there such a gap now where the provincial government has to force this on us? Like, where's the money going? Because taxes have went up, services have come down. When you go to like our local licensing offices are now dried up. We got to go to Minden. Nothing wrong with that. But anyway, it seems like government services are on their way down. They're forcing us to do more online to get services done and everything of the sort. Anyway, that was more of a statement than anything I'm going to put to you guys. But anyway,
Jim?
No, I'm gonna say maybe we can go to the next slide,
Sure.
if that's okay, because there's some more information to share. So this is just we summarized the results of the staff's survey around these key things. And again, it's for your information, where people see the opportunity, you know, for change. Roads and infrastructure was the most cited issue around needing improvement. That there's some disjointment, or, you know, it's not as effective as it could be across the municipalities. Planning, inconsistencies. Maureen was just talking about the way SDG does it. It's the same way in Hastings County. So maybe there's some opportunity there, but what you see is that there are different rules, different fees. We heard this last night, in fact, around concern from some of the public folks about the different rules and the different fee structures, et cetera, across. It causes some confusion. The service duplication and down the list, you know, job security, which, you know, Councillor Ryle was just talking about, is important to staff, obviously. There's a fair amount of division around, you know, autonomy or amalgamation, staying the same, or amalgamation, what works well. Some service gaps that they identified, like people talked about the need for pool or rec facilities, you know, better public transportation, more emergency services, et cetera. And this idea around the county's a big place. Geographically, it's a big place. So just one office isn't going to work. That's what we heard. You know, if you're going to go to a different model, you have to think about how you provide the services and where you provide the services to the public. So that's something that you would do in an implementation phase, I would think, and be mindful of it. So just kind of tried to put into these boxes or these key things, the comments that are coming from the staff survey. I just think it's just helpful for you to know as elected officials what folks are thinking, that folks that work for you. The next slide. Oh yeah. Oh, sure.
Lisa, go ahead.
Thank you, through the warden. I would be really interested in if you're considering this, but further down the line, as we're going through this and staff have more information about how this could possibly look and where everything falls in place,
how many people would still say neutral or, you know, if they would have an opinion more? Because, you know, that line about staff asking, will my job be at risk, is probably a really good reason to give a neutral answer on that. So is that something you're considering possibly, like polling those staff members again, just to see, once they have all of the information, just like all of us, where we actually fall on what the final outcome might be and what we would feel about that?
I think anything's possible. We can work with Mr. Dyke around that piece. But you're right, people may have different opinion once they see what the options might be, once we're able to provide those to you here at County Council. It is interesting to me that affordability is really high on their list. And when we talk to your staff about affordability, we say, think about it from a property taxpayer's lens. The people who are actually paying the taxes. And what you see on this one is, yeah, they're concerned about it too. And I think that's a really important thing to know, that your staff are very concerned about that. Just an observation, Ken. Next slide.
I got one other
sorry.
question, Councillor Rao.
I was just going to ask and follow up to what to what we were just talking about, just putting a timeline on that in some way, shape or form. So that if we didn't like to do another survey tomorrow, doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
No.
But to do one, say, early September, mid-September, in time for people to get an understanding of what's going on, but enough time also to allow whatever's going to happen over the next couple of months to start influencing the various people's decisions, whether in this particular case, staff, I think would be an important idea. Allowing enough time to go by to make a change.
We have to deliver the study to the county by the final study, final report by the end of July. So that information is going to be to you as county council. The final report's going to be due by July, and that will outline what we say are the options for you, the models. And I think after that's out and people have a chance to digest it, that might be a good time to go back and test. But that's something that we will need to work with Gary. I think it's out of scope right now in terms of what we're doing, Gary, but
There you go.
Yeah, just to speak to the scope of project. So as Mr. Pine had mentioned, that the final study will be presented back to County Council last week, July, first week, August. And from that, I am currently working with Eeyore and Jason St. Pierre on the next stage of it and what we're going to do once the report has been released. We're looking at holding 2 town halls after the release of the report to allow people to assimilate the information and then have conversations that way leading into the fall. So we are looking at the third phase of the project would be looking at what we do once the report has been released.
See?
So would mean that we would have either an appendix or a follow-up report that would be attached to this one that would come out later with that information. Would that be correct?
Okay.
I'm sorry. Councillor.
Yeah, I said once you've got the information you just spoke about,
Yeah.
That would lead to either an addendum or an appendix of some kind coming up later to clarify some of that newer information that you're going to be finding.
Yeah, if I might. So from just, again, we're still building that piece of it, is given under the instructions I'm currently under with County Council, is the current council is the report is released to the public at the end of July, beginning of August. We'll then do some follow-up to make sure that people understand what they're seeing, make sure everybody has copies of the report. The follow-up information you're talking about, or the ancillary information we're going to build onto the information, would then be part of the package that will go to the subsequent council for their consideration on the findings of the report, and the build-up going into that decision-making process.
Jim?
maybe we can go to the next slide if it's okay. This is one I think that you might be interested. These are members of the public, and I don't know if we have the exact numbers yet of the respondents yet, Lisa. I don't know if you've seen, but I think our understanding is probably just under 100 or so in week 1. Oh, does she? So what are we seeing as a result of those respondents? And again, we tried to put them in key themes or buckets. On the affordability piece, highly at 86%, people are concerned about the cost of living in the county. They're concerned about taxation and service costs. Probably no, it's no surprise, I'm sure, to you. On the issue of desire for change, 65% of those current respondents, and again, this is week one, saying that changes are needed, and they want, a large number of them, 89%, want more municipal cooperation. So it's coming from members of the public. I don't know what, without looking deeply into their comments about what is cooperation, we can guess at what that might mean. But anyway, they're just saying that they are looking at it. They're also saying that here, right currently, 3/4 of them, 75% is saying the quality of life is good or very good. So, and I'm sure that that's important to them to try and maintain. On the governance side, I think if you look at it, the middle line, 85% believe that local identity can be maintained under a new model. I think that's pretty significant. That it's not going to be a barrier in the sense of looking at change. What's going to be key is, if there is going to be changes, what tactics and techniques do you employ to try and preserve some of that local identity? And we talked a little bit about that with some community leaders last night. And 70% say they don't understand, or that the current two-tier system isn't serving residents well. Whether that's education about what that really is, or it's just, it's take it for what it is. That's what they're saying at this point around the two-tier system. So maybe that's an indicator that they're open to look at change. And so you can see their top priorities around cooperation, affordability, and financial sustainability, which is really sort of the key driver of the study, I would say. What's it look like? How can we make it affordable and sustainable in terms of the government services we have to provide? And then, down the list. So the most important service priorities for them, it's interesting, not surprisingly, emergency services, perhaps especially with an aging population base, that's going to be really critical. And down the list, you can see roads and services around roads, and environmental protection. Recreation has a high degree too, at 40% in terms of a service priority. So I'm going to just stop, because I think, I'd like to hear your thoughts on what you're seeing in this first round. Gary?
Very good.
Sorry, can I just provide some clarification to Councillor Dayou's question from, can we go back to the earlier slide about the external cost? So our ever diligent treasurer is following along at home. So
The next one?
So just for clarity, so there's two pieces of information on this chart. So you're correct, Councillor Dayou, with respect to the library. So the 15.9% of the library fee, that's the total amount of our external costs going out. Not the increase, but the total cost going out. The number, so that's the statement there with respect to that. So that's the total cost. So but the text on the right, that's referencing that 35% of the increase to our tax rate was driven by external costs, of which on a separate chart within your budget book would have shown a negative piece on the library. But my comment from earlier pertains of our external costs. It's one of the smaller ones we do, so it has minimal impact on how that percentage would change. So those are the two things. So the percentage you see around the circle, that's the percentage of the value of our total external expenditures.
So Gary, 52% is of your external expenditures are related
is to CKL.
Yeah,
that's correct. And so just for clarity again, and Andrew mentioned, is so these are just the numbers that go out. We're not quite, to Councillor Carter's point, we're not talking about service levels. This is the checks we write going out the door. And that was the purpose behind these numbers.
Councillor Dayou?
Yes, thank you for that, Mr. Dyke, and for Ms. Robinson listening from home and working away. That's very helpful clarification. I do wonder if perhaps we could break that down a little bit more, because those differentiations I think are important moving ahead. And I do find this slide a bit confusing. So for the sake of the public, it would be great to have greater clarity there. Thanks for that.
Okay, back to your slide, Jim. Any questions or comments? We'll get caught up here again. Councillor Carter.
Yeah, I think it'll be important to see, as that rolls out. I mean, we have our 30,000 or so people who are electors here. You only got 100. So it may change as you get into from, enthusiastic permanent residents to somewhat enthusiastic permanent residents to cottagers and so on. A couple of things that aren't on there at all that, we hear about often are transportation. I assume medical services, emergency services are probably lumped together. There's no economic development there that, lots of people want to talk about and hear about. And so it'll be interesting to see as we get more numbers, how these change. This is like getting the early vote.
Yeah. Yeah, and we actually had a discussion this morning about whether to share this with you or not, to be honest. But then we thought, well, you probably should know, because we'll see what the change might be. So we decided to err on, we're gonna let you know what the first week said. So, but you're right, it could change and probably will.
Councillor Rowe.
I haven't seen the public survey, so I apologize for what I'm going to ask. But are we identifying which of our lower tier municipalities some of these people are from? And I'm asking for a specific reason, because when you look at representation, you may not get the same answer from Highlands East as you would from Minden Hills, because the impact would be different. Whereas in Highlands East, I know just talking to the public in general, they're quite concerned about, are we going to get lost if anything starts to go in towards an amalgamation mode? And so I'm wondering if there was any way to capture that kind of information to determine whether the small rural ones, like Algonquin Highlands perhaps, could be in the same boat. Are we going to lose our identity in a bigger amalgamated group?
Lisa?
I'll have to get back to you. I don't remember off the top of my head. I'm sure that's part of it, that would be actually, that's a question we're asking our audit survey. Is about identity, urban identity. But before I say that, I wanted to go back and look at the
Deputy Warden.
As to Councillor Rael's comments, as much as losing our identity is a concern for all of us, I'm concerned, as I'm sure as Highlands East, about losing our voice. When it comes to decision making, and this is probably not an appropriate time, and I'm not sure what the answer is going to be. But one of the things that I wonder about when it comes time to make a decision, you provide us with options. It goes out to everybody. It gets all stirred around and mixed up, and then there's time to make a decision. What are we going to do? Is the weighted vote going to come into play?
So it's under my,
No disrespect to Dysart and
No.
Minden.
so it's my understanding through the way the procedure bodies identifies what is subject to the weighted vote, that this would not apply to the situation. However, as we go forward and build the next level report for the incoming council, all that will be answered officially. That we'll get the full legal opinion on it, whether it does or not. It's our initial, I'm not speaking for Erin, I'm speaking internally now when we did the work. It's our understanding that it would not apply, but we will verify that before it comes out into the next level reporting that goes to the new iteration of county council.
Go ahead.
Just one more comment. I just wanted to tell Councillor Casey, I absolutely love the analogy of bailing out a boat with a hole in it, because it's just perfect.
Jim?
So we'll be back to you the next time we're talking to you, I guess, and we'll try to find the right opportunity to show you the further results from the survey. So, but again, we just wanted to give you an indication of what week one looked like from folks that live in the communities, at least 103 of them, I think, at this stage.
Councillor Dayu?
Thanks. And further to Councillor Ryle's question, I'd also be curious to know, even if the information is not presented to us, if you are able to disaggregate based on socioeconomic background, whether they're workers or retirees, because one possible scenario, and who knows, is that it's the retirees who are up at the cottage full time who have had the opportunity to get in there and do the survey, and they're working off of their their pension, or I'm making a huge judgment here in the scenario, but it is a valid scenario. And the folks that really are struggling with quality of life just haven't had the time to do the survey. So if there's a way of knowing who is answering, it might just offer a lens through which to understand the data that we're receiving, even if council doesn't receive that disaggregated data.
Thank you. We'll go back and I think look at what the survey questions were and see if we can pull that.
Councillor Rowe.
One of the things that I brought up when you came to see us was that there are going to be, or at least there appears to be, some advantages to going into some kind of a consolidated or merged scenario. I understand that. Having been through that same scenario with the health unit, it ain't free. There is a cost associated with anything we do. And let's just say we don't go to a full amalgamation, but we do look at the subject that came up, to which was planning. Okay, so we have 5 official plans. We're going to go to 1. We're going to start looking at how we do business. That is going to take time. It's going to cost money. It's going to require us to rethink a lot of what we're going to do. So there is a cost associated with that, whether it's through bringing more consultants in, whether it's through doing it ourselves. And my question is a very simple one. Who the heck is going to pay for that? Because in the health unit scenario, when you added all those things up, it came to almost, if not more than, $30 million. I'm estimating, and this is just me throwing a number out there, and I certainly am going to get rebutted on it, that if we were to go to the full extent on this one, we're probably looking at somewhere between $30 and $50 million, which right automatically says, 1, where's it going to come from? And 2, are we going to get $50 million worth of return on all of this? I think it's important that somewhere along the line, and not too far into the future, we start putting some ideas together on the costs. An example would be, if planning is a good idea, I have no problem with that. But let's find out what it would cost approximately to do that. How much would it cost us to consolidate, merge, whatever the right word is, our planning sector? And I think it would go for anything else that we're going to be doing. So we may not choose, but again, the incoming council may not choose to go the full gamut, but there may be good things coming out of the report that they say, yes, we should go in that direction. But they need to be able to know that with open eyes. And I think that that's an important piece, which I hope will come very shortly.
Gary?
I think this is kind of out of the scope of work or Ian's piece right now, so I can speak to that directly for a couple of reasons. So one thing, and I've said this before, I would be very cautious to compare what we're doing to what happened with the health unit with respect for the council, because of the complexities of what they were doing and the size of what they're doing as well from a quantitative standpoint, from the dollar standpoint. However, what you're asking for is what the product of this study is going to do. The study is going to identify options, going to identify costings, and then as we dig deeper into the second and subsequent phases, depending on the direction from the new council, we'll identify those elements. As I've mentioned before to county council and when I appeared for the local councils as well, our approach to the ministry was we fully recognize that there needs to be support from the province to underwrite the cost of change, right? We're doing this in the context, and that was in the initial report I brought to council back in April, was just that. We recognize there's a cost because we talked about the factors that impacted the cost of amalgamation before. And so I've had some meetings with the province. They are interested to continue that conversation going forward as we go forward. And as we get more information and re-engage the province on certain levels, that will be our push going forward, is that this is what we're, to somebody's point, one of the councilors' point earlier, is we are trying to get our house in order, but we're partners in this, right? And so that's where we're going for. So just those two things is that we're trying to stay away from speculation on numbers right now because we don't have that data right now. But we are working with the province to talk about the cost of underwriting the cost of any change.
Deputy Warden?
I know this is a major concern of Councillor McKechnie's. He's raised it from, day one when we've been talking about this is the cost of the change that we might have to bear. One of the things that I think about too is not just the cost, but the workload associated with, when you think about all the bylaws that each one of the municipalities have and the differences between them and the work that's associated with, if there was such a thing as amalgamation, how to bring that all together, the amount of work that's associated with that, with policies, development, it's astronomical, and costly
Jim?
in order to bring down the costs ultimately.
Yeah, maybe I can just a response for me. We went through this when we created the city of Quinny West, 1997, 1998. 4 municipalities came together and created a city of about just under 50,000, single tier. All of the staff, all of those issues. It's going to take you time to go through all of the different bylaws. It's going to take you time to get everything in shape. But what I can tell you is it's doable. It will take. You should have expectations that there will be a transition time to get to, if I can call it, a steady state, whatever the new municipalities will look like. So going into it, know that it will take time. Most of that effort is done with your staff. They're going to be looking at the bylaws. It's not as though you have to bring in, and we didn't bring in gobs of consultants to help with things that the staff could normally do together. It takes time to get there, and it is a lot of work. But I bet you'll find that the differences are not as great as you might imagine, because you're all supposed to be doing similar things, right? Have different ways, but it does come together. It's a bit of a assurance for me is that I was the first CAO for the city of Quinny West when we set it up, and I was a CAO in waiting for a year while we were going through with the transition board to do this, and there's a real process to put in place to ensure that these changes can happen. So don't despair, if I can put it that way, but know that it takes time, and it'll take time for your staff to get there. But it is doable. City of Quinny West has been operating now as a single tier independent municipality for 26 years. They just celebrated their 25th last year, and they've got their act together, if I could put it that way. But it did take time. What takes the real time is the politics, where people to start to thinking about themselves as representing whatever the entity is or entities. That it takes a little bit of time, but that's just human nature, and that's natural. You just have to expect it.
Councillor McKechnie?
Yeah, I want to make, especially to the public and all the taxpayers in Dysart, I am in favor of anything that's going to save them money and also keep their taxes at some form of stability, stable. But I mean, there's a lot of concern out. There's a lot of people that aren't speaking up, and I know that because I talk to them, and in Dysart, and like your reports here are fantastic. There's so much information here. I know I can't take it all in. I'm sure the average person couldn't either. And like, there's no idea of what kind of money you're talking about here of cutting, like, to make things efficient. Like, you know what I mean? Like to me, I ran my own business for 24 years, and I had some tough times. And there's only two ways when you're doing your budget after you've had a bad year that you can cut your budget down in regard to costs. And the way I did it was I cut some staff and I cut some of my services out, which was my menu items. So like it barrels down to, if you're really serious about amalgamating these 4 municipalities, is that there's got to be some serious cuts. Like it has to be. Because we have five CEOs. I've heard this comparison. I've heard people talk about it. And there's over $1 million in salaries for the 5 CEOs. So is it going to be one CEO is making $300,000 or $400,000, which is that's a cut for sure. But is the CAO going to make 350? And is she going to have he or she going to have 2 or 3 assistants? Well, when you add those figures up, you're saving. This is just one area, and you're going to save maybe a couple $100,000. That's not going to bail us out.
Jim?
So our job is to give you options or our models and to cost those out. That's what Gary was saying. We're in the information collection phase right now. And we're going to be doing financial analysis really through July. So we'll be giving you some of that, the information that you're looking for, I think, on the financial side with these particular models. But about your concern about the CAO salary, I think all you have to do is look at the public salary disclosure list for municipalities that would be of similar size. Let's just say about 22,000 taxpayers here or people here. You can see where the salary range lies, and it's not at that high level. And so you'll have to be competitive with your comparator groups, but I'm going to guess that it's not going to be at that really high level. It's going to be something much less than that. But that's that's an analysis that you need to do when you're looking at it. So we're just in the information stage, Councillor, but we do have to give you our financial overview of the models that we come forward, whether it's a single tier or whether it's something else. As I said at the beginning, we have not landed on what we think you absolutely have to do. That would be a false way of going forward. We need to hear from you, and that's what we're doing. So whatever the results are in terms of models, as Gary said, we have to cost those out for you so that you can make a good evaluation of what's the right decision.
What were your taxes before in Quinte West? When you started this, like ballpark, what they were, what are they now?
It's impossible for me to ask
Yeah.
because I've been gone from there in Quinte West since 1991, I think it was when I left the CAO. So it's a long time ago, but I guess we could ask what the average tax rate is or the actual tax bill in Quinte West is, but it's going to be dependent on what services are provided, of course. So it's kind of hard to do an apples to apples.
Yeah, and that piece too as well, forgive me, is you're getting into the inflationary factor from 2000 to 2026. So the modeling can be done, but those are the facts I put in place and the service level difference as well. But I think, and I'm sorry for jumping in, but I think Jim raised a really good point is to view it from, there is no decision. We haven't landed on any scenario. We're presenting viable scenarios going forward with the financial data and anything goes with it on implementation, those type of things, and cost and the benefit standpoint for a decision to be made, right? And it's up to the council coming in. Here are the factors we've lined up. What's your comfort level on where you think we should go based on the emphasis of the community in that. But in addition to that from a perspective standpoint, is view it from a municipality of between 21 and 25,000 people like that. So if you're looking for comparators, there's roughly about 11 municipalities in the province of Ontario that lie within that window. And they're pretty good in that. They're pretty good comparators to what you're looking at from things that you're speaking of, Councillor McKechnie, because it's a good point to bring up, but just put it in perspective. That's kind of how the evaluation is going to go forward.
Councillor Ryle?
Yeah, first off, thank you very much. And I thoroughly appreciate what you're doing. You're kind of almost getting attacked by the wolves, but I don't think that's the intention. I think the intention is that we're dealing with the unknown at the same time. A lot of the answers to the questions that have been asked are just not available at the moment, or won't be available until the time comes. So I truly appreciate what you're doing. And you're allowing us to really start looking at the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to a large amalgamation and or some kind of a buildup to something like that. One of the things that I'm glad we're doing is we're not amalgamating and then figuring it out. That's a suicide mission. First you amalgamate and then you figure out what you should have done. I think what we're doing is we're looking at all the options and maybe that we don't go to an amalgamation mode in the first, but we look at consolidation. An example, planning. Does it make sense to do that? And if the answer to that is yes, and the incoming council believes it is, then why not just move forward with that particular piece? Because I have a funny feeling that if we were to go to the big A as a thing, you're looking at a multi-year program. I can't see that happening in less than a couple of months. I think you're going to look at several years. And I think the proof will be in the pudding. And that is, as we take on, or as they take on each of these items, they're going to either decide to or not to do certain things. And I hope that they make the decision that first we will adjust what needs to be adjusted, and then we'll make a decision on amalgamation, bearing in mind that in some cases you can't make a decision on some of the stuff unless you actually are amalgamated. So for me, thank you very much. You're giving me a tremendous amount of information. You're also leaving me with a bunch of questions.
Deputy Warden.
To Councillor McKechnie's questions about where were the taxes before and where were the taxes after for Quinte West, would it be a fairer question to say, do you believe that the amalgamation allowed continued levels of service without a substantial increase in taxes?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. I think what it also did was by pooling the collective capacities of the four communities, that it's allowed them to do new and other things too, and also to maintain services at the levels that were provided before and improved. And just there's been improvements to the water and wastewater systems. There's been improvement to roads. They paved roads. They've built new facilities. And in part, we made a conscious decision to say, if we get together, can we keep providing the services to the citizens that they've been getting? Can we provide it in a better way, and can we offer more? And there was a real conscious decision to say, I think if we get together, that we now have a bigger capacity to do things, and we're very purposeful where we do these things, to recognize that even in the smallest communities that came together as part of the city, that you're going to have to pay attention to those villages and those hamlets. You know, the village of Frankfurt, for instance, it was very small as part of the amalgamation, but it got lots of attention, and it had representation politically, even though it was small in comparison to the rest of it. It was a conscious decision. There are ways to do this to satisfy the concerns about representation and the concerns about service delivery. And I think that's, in thinking ahead, and I'll use this analogy I used, I think, yesterday, what's coming at you? And I'll just pick on water and wastewater. Not all of the four communities have wastewater. One, two, I think, right, have water and wastewater services. But across the province, AMO estimates that about $300 billion worth of new spending has to happen over the next 10 years. 200 million is just to keep what we've got to a standard. And we know that that's kind of the one service that can't fail. Water and wastewater, particularly drinking water, you can't let it fail. You know what the result is if you do. End up with Walkerton, perhaps, which is nobody's going to go there anymore or wants to go there. But if we've got to spend all this money just to keep what we've got, and to put 100 billion, they say, is for new growth. That'll be in areas where there's growth happening. But if you know that's coming, and you know the age of your infrastructure, of your pipes, your water plants, your distribution systems, your collection systems, isn't today the good time to be thinking about that and getting ready? And so it's about capacity too. There are different ways to deliver water and wastewater. It doesn't necessarily have to be done by your own municipal staff. You can set up now a municipal service filter, for instance, which is a way of putting a skills-based board in place to provide that service and to grow it or to take care of it. So there's lots of options around it, but I think the prudent thing is to be forward-thinking. I think that the city of Quinte West is in a really good position because of the way they've done things. And Gary used to work there as well. And I think he will hopefully share the same opinion I have, is that it had the right kind of attributes to coming together, and it's allowed them to do things that we wouldn't have been able to do in the township, city township where I was, couldn't have done some of the things. We didn't have the capacity or the built infrastructure to take advantage of, but we had other things that came to the table that was helpful. So I've always said, and I've said it to the city, that for me, it's a model of what can go right. And you take the time and think it through. It took us a year from the time the decision was made in 1997 that there was going to be a restructuring to the start of the city. It was just a year of transition that we had to put it together. And we did. But it still took years to get the bylaws in place. You know, how do you orient fire service to make sure it's right? You know, all of those things. It is a work in progress, but there was a starting point and the point where it launched, and there's a year in between.
Councillor Dagan.
Thank you. And I know we keep taking you off your slides, but you can tell the passion in the room. We all really care about these points. So my question, I guess, regarding the Quinte West model is, and really recognizing there is no apples to apples comparison, but in Haliburton, our population is spread over 4,000 square kilometers. And so there are certain services, say wastewater, that one or two municipalities might have currently that communities way the heck to the north or to the east will simply never benefit from. So in the Quinte West model or any of the other models, how did you configure tax rates to recognize that certain services would probably only be available in certain areas, not for everyone? Or did you come up with a single tax categorization that was applicable to everyone? Because levy math can get really complicated.
Maybe I'll step in through you, Mr. Chair. So for water and wastewater specifically, they're treated like a utility. The users of the systems pay for that, and they have to pay for that. So you can't take funding from other sources and put it in to fund those services. So that's critically important for everybody to understand. So those two areas that have the systems, the people that are using the systems will still have to pay to support those systems. But to your point, there's other components, debt levels, reserve levels. So then there's a component of catch up or equalization where other municipalities will have to either get the debt paid down or get the reserves brought up through rate equalization, right? So everything's not going to go into one pool, and then there's just a new tax rate where everybody shares. Like, there's got to be fairness for the residents that have contributed to those reserves. They stay in that region, in that area, until it's exhausted. Like, so so it's a little bit complicated, but that absolutely has to happen so that it's fair.
Got Councillor Casey, and then I'm going to probably call for a quick break. Pat, go ahead.
Yeah, just for our own information. Service delivery review, was it noted on there about, I'm going to say snowplow efficiency, let's say, where snowplows are passing each other from one end of the county to the other to plow a little spot, and I often use Dysart and Harcourt and Algonquin Highlands where we're passing each other's plow trucks on the road, and I'm using this as an example of efficiency on that note. Was that ever brought up in the past, and did it ever get implemented? Or I mean, it hasn't, because it's still happening, but I'm just picking that one topic as an example of internal efficiencies to look at. I'll go ahead first, if you don't mind.
So just from, again, it was my understanding when that was done, it predated me being at the county. All those elements were looked at. The level with that service review, very small portion of that review was actually implemented as it went forward from 22 onward. But those were the type of things that were looked at, and those are the type of things we looked at under any scenario that's being brought forward. Those would be, the analysis would use existing data and that to look at those type of things as they go forward.
Okay, and that leads me to say a couple other things here where we use that as an example, but we also have septic approval, septic inspections and everything else. It seems that every township's got their own recipe for that type of a thing. And septic doesn't run 2 feet shorter than Haliburton and it does in Minden on that note. But again, if we got on the same baselines of that, it makes the more process more streamlined. The other thing I'll mention too is that when service delivery reviews like that get talked about and I'm going to say implemented or not implemented, it may be a reflection on the response or the questions that we're putting out to the public, where they feel that doesn't matter what they're going to say, there's nothing's going to change. And in your marketing material, I would suggest you put something in there that amplifies that. Say, listen, we're seriously looking at, having a revisit of efficiencies and everything else. This is my own opinion, of course. But anyway, just putting that out there. So.
If I can
Jim?
just so bold, your honor, when it's your direction and your opinions that really count in terms of what's serious and what's not serious about it. So we can say that you're serious, but I think when people hear your comment stuff, they'll understand that. So
Sorry, Bob, go ahead.
There's obviously lots of questions. But, what we decided to do a month or so ago is to, first of all, do this study, which was to, go out there, get everybody's opinion and try to come up with some alternatives. Once we have the results of the study and we have the alternatives, it's going to go to pretty much to the next council. The next council will then go out and do the financial analysis of each of the alternatives and get a feel for what people think about it, and then decide which way to go. I've worked on 25 or 30 mergers and acquisitions, some of multi-million-dollar companies or actually billion-dollar companies, and they take as long as they're going to take. In some cases, because of certain pressures, we had to do one in 3 weeks. In other cases, you go to your lady from Bell and with project management experience and say, here are the 400 things we need to do to, put together the alternative we've chosen. And you start working through the alternatives. The important thing of, like whether on the fire department may be only a year from now before you do something with that. And there's other things you have to do ahead of time. So it will take as long as it takes. If the politics don't get too silly, it'll obviously go, a lot easier. But the point is that we decided on a process, and I think that we let this process play out. The financial aspects of it, we have no idea what it'll cost. And, sometimes the costs are such that, it's internal costs versus external costs. And, how do you really measure that? The proof is when the new councils decide that this is the way we want to go, that, we go through it in a systematic and effective way. And I think that, we laid out those steps and, now we should be true to them and follow them, because I think this is definitely the process that will lead to success.
Thanks, Bob. Okay, 10-minute break. Good, thank you. Call the meeting back to order. Pass it over to Jim.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. We're really at the end of our presentation. Maybe we can just go, I think, 2 slides ahead. Yeah, I think we'll end here. Just a reminder about where we're at with the study. We're in this initial phase of collecting information. We had a lot of really good conversation today, and thank you for that. We have to present Gary an interim report on the status of the work to date at the end of June, and we'll do that. And then the final report will come back to County Council at the end of July with all, we hope, the information that you're looking for. And then after that, you'll determine what next steps are. And Gary will be working on that, I would think. But we wanted to, from the 3 of us, wanted to say thank you for today. This was a chance for us to come and give you a little bit of an update as to what we're hearing and where we're at with the study and get some input from you. So thank you. We're always able to come back when you want us again, and we can work through Gary to do that. But I'll just say thank you for taking the reins on such an important study at this time. It's very timely from my point of view, and congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thanks, Jim. Maureen, any?
I'd just like to thank everybody for their feedback today. We know we have more information that we need to come back with, but we're pleased to start to have some of those survey results, and we'll be updating those as more information comes in.
Okay. Lisa? Thank you. We have a resolution, I believe.
That the EORN engagement with the county council be received.
Could have someone move? Councillor Carter, Councillor Shell. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Confirmation bylaw?
The bylaw 4350 being a bylaw confirm the proceedings of the June 17th, 2026 special meeting of Haliburton County Council be considered to be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed.
Could have someone move? Deputy Warden Danielson, second by Councillor Casey. All in favor? It's carried. Adjournment?
That the June 17th, 2026 special meeting of Haliburton County Council be adjourned at 11:20 a.m.
Councillor McKechnie, second by Councillor Ryle.